Okay, so today we're going to talk about critical path. For anybody less familiar with that term, critical path is simply the set of tasks that make up the shortest time that it would take to complete a project, assuming everything goes to plan. So why would this matter? This is where you want to make sure you can identify those tasks very plainly, call them out in such a way that whenever you're doing touch bases with a project team or examining where you are with any statuses for any of these key tasks, you're looking at them in a different light. These are the key details that you want to make sure that if something is off track, you have a good plan in place to get it back on track. And if you don't, make sure that you're having those conversations to get to a spot where you do. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our project schedule here, and we'll take a look at how exactly you can work with critical path, working within the application of your choice. And then once you have it clearly identified, what are some of the nuances that make it important when you're working with those tasks on a day-to-day basis? So first off, what we're looking at here for the critical path example, we simply have a very short list of tasks that we've grouped into different phases of a project. And it is important to note that we have set up predecessor relationships for each of our tasks. So since I have predecessors already defined, I'm going to go ahead and put in a start date for my first task, and we can start working with things from there. So let's say that this is going to start a week from today. Because we have our predecessors defined, we know that all of our dates are going to populate throughout the rest of the project schedule so that we can start working with some of these details. I've also set up an additional column off here to the right that's going to be able to help us identify what those critical path items are. So now that we have critical path defined, we can see with an indicator here exactly what that critical path item is. And also, coming over here to the Gantt chart that we've got on the right-hand side, we have a selector here for this particular tool where we can click this, and it's going to highlight any of those items that are on critical path. So we can see at a glance that all of our rows that we have here as far as the individual tasks are listed as critical path, with the exception of row 6. That's our row for our validation sessions. So understanding that validation sessions is not technically part of our critical path, any adjustments that we make, as long as they're within reason, it shouldn't affect our ability to go live on schedule based on how we've written this plan. So just to see that in action, if I were to change the 2-week validation sessions to now be 3 weeks, we can see that we've now expanded that. It has not impacted our dates anything below that. All of our go live dates and everything leading up to it are still intact. We could even go further with that. So now, the way that we have the plan written, we have validation sessions extending all the way beyond the build sessions that we have for the entire rest of the execution piece of the project, and even all the way up to where we have some of the early stages of what we have for go-live activities. Probably not a very realistic scenario, and probably not a good situation to be in if we were actually trying to manage this project in a day-to-day basis. So let's come back and let's reset that to what it previously was. And let's change this such that instead of just looking from one task to the next, skipping over that, we're going to now set the build task activities to only begin after our validation sessions have concluded. So now that we made that adjustment, we can see we've shifted out our dates for the rest of the go live, and that's taking into consideration that we don't want to start the build until the validation sessions have concluded. If we wanted to adjust that in some ways, we could play around with what we've got for some of the dates, some of the durations, as well as what we've got for the predecessor relationships. But at a glance, we now know that because validation sessions is part of critical path, if we were to adjust the duration of that task, we're now seeing the go live date shift accordingly as well. And that's an example of how critical path works. If you adjust something on your critical path, you can expect that to adjust what you've got for your final dates for whatever you have further down the tracks in your project plan, and ultimately what you actually have to work forward to for a go live date, a product launch, whatever it is at the end of the road for what you're working on. So I hope that this was useful. If it was, go ahead and like, subscribe, and we'll see you for more content coming up soon. Thank you.